right, good evening, everybody. We're going to call to order the Tuesday, November 2nd meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. Rebecca, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Mongan.
Here.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Here.
Vice Mayor Casissa.
Here.
Mayor Beckman.
Here, thank you. Please join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. That brings us to open time for public comment. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to comment on any items that are not on tonight's agenda, and members of the public will be given 3 minutes apiece. If you'd like to make a public comment, go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom here or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And we're going to start with David and then move on to Sarah. And David, it looks like you're unmuted, but we are not able to hear you.
Okay, how about now?
There we go.
Thank you. Just a note, there's a tremendous amount of feedback on my end listening to your end. So I don't know if that's going to be a problem for everyone else in the public. But in any event, I simply wanted to talk quickly about notice for the Paradise Drive multi-use path extension. As many of you might know, I personally feel that with the exception of the opening of the Alto Tunnel, the extension of safe bicycle and pedestrian access to Robin Drive is one of the most important projects the town will take on. For reasons that I can't explain, and I'm speaking very slowly because there's tremendous feedback on my end, I did not receive any notice of a meeting tomorrow night, which is supposed to be the first public outreach meeting via Zoom with BKF engineers and Public Works and probably the town manager and others. So I just want to make sure that notice goes out better in the future on this project. No one in the Marin County Bicycle Coalition and other members of the public, including other members of the BPAC, received any notice. I received my notice at 4 p.m. today for a 5:30 hearing tomorrow. So that's it. I just personally feel that this is a very, very important project, and I want to make sure that anyone that lives in Corte Madera, particularly on the bay side, has an opportunity to weigh in, because there's so many conflicting interests as well as engineering obstacles to overcome. And I'm sure we can do better in the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, David. Appreciate your comments. And we're going to go next to, I believe it's going to be Sarah, followed by Kurt.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sarah Vigil, and I represent over 1,000 families, trainers, and coaches that participate in both the Corte Madera FC competitive soccer, recreational soccer, and MISA soccer. And we just wanted to state that we are in full support of the installation of a turf field where the current grass east field at Town Park resides. And we would like to offer any support we can and ask that Parks and Rec lean on us to get this project underway. We have reached out to our community to get help with design options, cost estimates, research on type of turf, benefits and drawbacks other towns have seen. We are willing to reach out for grant writing and or 501c3 donations, as well as any other key items that might be necessary. And we just, wanted to thank you and hope that this can be something that can be further discussed, and let us know if we can be of any support.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah. And I just want to let everybody else on the line know that the Parks and Recreation Department's need assessment is going to be an agenda item that is coming up later this evening. That's on our agenda. So we're going to ask folks with public comments directly related to that. I realized Sarah's was more about just turf fields in particular, but if anyone's wanting to comment on the Parks and Rec need assessment or programming, please do hold your comments until we get to that agenda item. We're going to go next to Kurt, followed by Lisa.
Thank you. I wanted to add some comments, but can I defer to, is Tom Manuel on the line? He was going to do some comments about Palm Avenue traffic, and I'm adding some concerns to that. Is Tom available?
I do see a hand up
I am
from
not-
a,
Yes, I do see
I've
it.
got a hand up from a Tommy.
So he did send an emailed public comment to publiccomment@tcmail.org, and that was included in the council's packet.
Yeah, okay, I saw that. Okay, well, we are writing to add our concerns to this evening's discussion regarding safety issues at the intersection of Palm and Pepper Avenues, Hart Street, and the unpaved path up to the multi-use trail. We've lived at 107 Palm Avenue since 1982 and raised our family here, 2 doors south of the intersection in question. Over these years, we've seen numerous near accidents due to drivers' speed and their inability to see pedestrians or cars coming from other directions, when northbound especially. Approaching northbound on Palm, most traffic will turn right onto northbound Pepper in a somewhat of a right-left dogleg turn. Seeing only a narrow sliver view up Pepper's left-hand sidewalk, drivers often assume the Pepper vehicle lane is empty and proceed at speed through the dogleg. Quite frequently, they encounter an unseen oncoming car, both of which must swerve and stop suddenly. On top of the dangers to drivers themselves, this semi-blind intersection has significant pedestrian and bicyclist traffic to and from Hart Street, unpaved path down from the multi-use trail. In the morning and afternoon, there are many children school-bound in both directions, which feeds them right into this intersection with no sidewalks. Those on bicycles often descend rapidly out of the Hart lane, unable to stop on the gravel, right into the intersection in question. And we drive in that alley to get to our garage, and we creep into it because kids often come right down and head on into you, or we're worried they might at least. Palm Avenue might seem to be a sleepy little street, yet it's often quite busy as a popular detour up Pepper and over Alexander Avenue Bridge to avoid the heavy traffic and the signal on Magnolia, and vice versa. We believe that reducing the speed of traffic approaching this intersection, possibly with a yield sign northbound in the intersection of Palm Avenue into Pepper, would help to reduce the potential for accidents there. Painting a crosswalk across Palm Avenue here might also help slow approaching traffic, especially with that, all the school kids coming down that path right into that blind intersection. We urge the town to look into this issue. Thank you, and I'm speaking for myself, Kurt, and on behalf of Nancy Rademacher at 107 Palm Avenue. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Kurt. Appreciate you letting us know. Going to go next to Lisa, followed by Bill.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good, thank you. I live next door to Kurt Rademacher, across the street from Tom and Vicky Manuel. And I've lived here for 25 years, raised my kids here. I teach at Hall Middle School. I used to teach at Neil Cummins as well. I remember you, Eli. And it doesn't make sense that this southern block, there are 2 blocks of Palm Avenue. There's a yield sign at the southern end so that you don't run into traffic on Redwood. But at this end, at the north end, there is nothing, and there are 4 lanes. There's the bike path, there's the top, the first block of Palm that comes down, and there's Pepper. And cars will speed down Palm or up Palm, up to Pepper. And there are so many near accidents and kids possibly that have been knocked over by bicycles or, swerved. I don't understand why Baltimore and Pepper have 4 stop signs at that intersection where there's hardly anybody crossing it. And our intersection at Pepper and Palm and the alley and the upper block of Palm has no signs at all. it doesn't make sense. There should at least be a yield sign at this north end like there is at the south end, and possibly at the south end of the upper block of Palm. So the whole neighborhood is very concerned, and we're hoping at some point a yield sign is not that expensive, and it will at least slow some of the very fast cars coming through. A lot of trucks come through too because they get up to Palm Hill for whatever work that's being done. Does this make sense? Okay,
Yes.
that's all I need to say. Thank you. I hope something can be done. Otherwise, I'll come back again.
Great. Thank you very much, Lisa. And I understand we may have one or two more comments on that issue tonight, but Todd, can we just ask either you or RJ to follow up with these folks and just kind of get some feet on the ground out there and see what the situation is?
No, absolutely. And that's my message to everyone on this call. You shouldn't have to show up to a meeting to complain about safety issues. You should be able to work with staff. And so that would be, I'm just interested to know if anybody on the call coming up about this has spoken specifically to staff. But what we'll do is we'll grab our engineering team and Central Marin Police Authority, and we'll go out with you and problem solve it and figure out the best way to move forward. But this should be something simple that we can be very reactive to.
Perfect. Thanks so much. We're going to go to Bill next, followed by Tommy.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is Bill Rose, 104B Palm Avenue. First off, I want to thank you all for your service as a former public employee, a city planner for a number of years. I know the hard work you do, and that also extends to the town staff. And I'm speaking on the same issue that the previous two speakers mentioned, my neighbors. The traffic issues here on Palm have just over the years increased. The speed has increased. I think we're a cut-through street in some ways. When traffic gets bad on Tamalpais, on Magnolia, we see more traffic come through here. And for all of us that live here, I think we've all experienced the mirrors torn off the cars or worse damage to our cars. And that's really, that's minimal. It's when you start to see injuries. We've had the recent pets in the neighborhood, and that's happened for some time. But really what I'm speaking about as the parent of a young child, and really for anybody out here, is safety of pedestrians. And I hope that we can get ahead of this issue. I've worked with the staff on a number of items previously, and I have all the confidence that they will address this. I want to thank the town manager for his comments. And I would just take it one step further. I think the signs would be great and very much appreciated, but if we could even go towards traffic calming devices and at least investigate that, speed bumps, speed humps, something, crosswalks, anything will be greatly appreciated. So thank you again for your service, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Bill. And we're going to go next to Tommy.
Hi, my name is Tom Manuel. I've lived at 110 Palm since about 1977. I have had cats since about 1981. And up to the present day, we've had 3 cats killed in front of our house on Palm Avenue. Recently, a couple of our neighbors have also lost pets in the street there. One of the things I'm concerned about, well, first off, what I'd like to see, I want to echo Bill's statement about some kind of traffic control thing, a speed bump or something, but also, what is the speed limit in the neighborhoods? There are no signs that post the speed limit. So I'd like to at least see signs posting the speed limit and possibly some stop signs on either end of our block there. And I know that's going to be an engineering thing, but I know that children, Palm Avenue is used by so many pedestrians and people that enjoy walking, people with their children in baby strollers, bicyclers, skateboarders, all kinds of people use Palm Avenue.
Going down the middle of the street.
But once again, echoing Bill's thing, it's become a thoroughfare, and most people, I will say, are pretty good. But when you get the few speeders, and they come roaring down the street when they're speeding, all I want to say is, I guess, I don't expect any solutions, but I do want to point out that this is a problem that needs solutions, and that's all I have to say.
Great, thank you very much, Tom. And I don't see any other hands up from folks on the line right now. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments from people who have not had a chance to speak?
Let me just check the email again. I don't believe we did. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments from anyone who hasn't already spoken.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm not seeing any other hands up. Todd, I appreciate your comments there, and glad to hear that you guys are going to be able to go out there and work with residents to problem solve this. Todd, did you want to introduce the new building official? I don't know if he's on the line or not.
I did, if I could. Thank you very much. And I also wanted to let
Sure.
the council know regarding Mr. McPherson's comments as well. We have made a change in how we communicate major projects with the community. Not sure what happened here, but RJ and I are looking into that. But I can tell you that we've sent a mailer out to every resident in Corte Madera, not just specific neighborhoods, everybody. And this is a multi-meeting kind of workshop to work through it. But it was not our intent for someone to just get noticed today. 10 days ago, that document was ready to go out, and it should have. And so we'll follow up with that. But again, this is not the first and only workshop. This is part of our communications plan of really being thoughtful in projects. And so there'll be a lot more opportunity as we go, and we will always strive to be better. With that, I wish I was in person because I'd have my smoke machine and I'd have my Monday Night Football theme song because I'm really fired up about this introduction. I want to introduce our new building official, Chris Ragland. I think a lot's been going on in our community. Our building department is so important with how we interface with our community. I think it's one of the most forward interfacing departments in town. And I think we really needed to step back and find that outside perspective and expertise and fit. And as we started the process, and I really give Adam Wolf and Janet, our human resources manager, a lot of credit for their recruitment, but they found Chris. And Chris has 26 years of experience. He comes to us from both the states of Oregon and Idaho. And he's been on both sides of it. He's owned his own construction company. He's also been a manager rebuilding building departments in multiple jurisdictions, both large and small. And, when I sat back and I listened to him talk and I met him, I started to call references. Things that really jumped out at me were his sense of public service, being a public servant, public service, customer service, problem solving. When he has to be strong, he can, but finding a way to, interface with the community and find a way to make it work. He's just ultimately, he's a leader. He's supportive of his staff. He has a vision. And he is everything that we really want in a person. And I'm just really, really excited. He's on board. He started on Monday. We're bringing in 2 new permit technicians that he helped us select. So these are his selections. So he's going to have his team as he moves forward and really rebuild the department and work with staff and the council and the community to really take it to the next level. And so with that, I hope we haven't scared him away because, his first day, he's in the cave. So he's downstairs in our building. I promised him that we're moving in a couple months. We're building this new, really awesome, building. So I need you all to support me on that. But with that, I'll stop right there. And Chris, if you want to say hi to the council, it's all yours, but welcome aboard, my friend. I'm really happy to have you here.
Thank you, Todd. That's a wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your support and bringing me on. This was such a wonderful opportunity. And thanks to Adam and Janet as well. And just with the second day, it's been just a great adventure so far, meeting staff and finding out where things are at and where they can be and the potential for increased, enhanced, improved customer service, and just all kinds of exciting venues in front of us that we can take. So it's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Todd, and thank you, Chris. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you here in Corte Madera.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. More good stuff to come in the future.
Great. Well, thank you, guys. And with that, I'm not seeing any other hands up from members of the public. So we're going to go ahead and close open time for public comment. We do not have any presentations tonight, which brings us to item 4, which is the consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have been previously discussed and do not require any further discussion, but any member of the council or public can pull an item from the consent calendar for further discussion if they want to. Would any members of the council like to pull an item from our consent calendar? And seeing none, we're going to turn it over to the public. If any members of the public would like to pull an item from our consent calendar for discussion, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom here or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And I'll ask Rebecca if we got any emailed comments for the consent calendar.
Thank you, Rebecca. No, we did not receive any emailed public comments for the consent calendar.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up, so we'll close public comment and bring the consent calendar back to council for a motion. Bob?
Move items 4A through 4F.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second? Leela, thank you. And Rebecca, whenever you're ready.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kakuta,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. That brings us to item 5, which is public hearings. We have one public hearing tonight, and that is a public hearing to consider introduction of an ordinance amending Corte Madera's Municipal Code, Chapter 6.04, related to waste disposal, recycling, compost, general waste diversion. I'll turn it over to staff.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having me here. I'm here to present the staff report on this ordinance that is amending the municipal code. And we have Lisa Coelho from R3 Consulting on here as well to assist me in going over the ordinance changes because they pretty much did all the work and have been working with all of the jurisdictions on this. So this ordinance would amend Chapter 6.04, garbage disposal of Title 6, which is the health and sanitation section of the municipal code. And it adopts and incorporates mechanisms to help accomplish the goal of reducing organic waste in landfills as a source of methane as required by regulations that are developed by CalRecycle that would address the requirements that have been set by Senate Bill 1383. So Senate Bill 1383 or SB 1383 was signed into law in 2016, and it was created to reduce organic waste disposal by 75% and increase edible food recovery by 20% by the year 2025. And it requires all jurisdictions throughout the state of California to adopt a mandatory organic recycling ordinance by January 1st, 2022, which is why it's before you today. It requires that all commercial edible food generators, single family homes, and multifamily households have access to recycling programs that collect food scraps, landscaping waste, and other organic waste materials. CalRecycle regulations to achieve the state's outline organic waste disposal by 2025 have been set, and they did this through a model ordinance that would satisfy all of the requirements. And we've been working with R3 Consulting and Amy's assistance to customize the model ordinance for our town so that we can comply with the requirements. The proposed ordinance imposes new waste disposal requirements on residents and businesses with the town as required by SB 1383. And some of the key provisions include single family, multifamily, and businesses must have garbage, recyclable, and organics collection service. And those, everything must be properly sorted. Self-haulers of organic materials must source separate organics and take them to a facility that recovers organics and keep specified records of that hauling. Food recovery organizations and services must maintain certain records, including written agreements with edible food generators. The town's right to inspect and enforce the requirements and information related to penalties for violations are also contained in the ordinance. And beginning 2024, violations of any provision of the ordinance may result in a notice of violation and issuance of fines. In addition to adopting the ordinance, SB 1383 replaces regulations place other requirements on all jurisdictions within the state. And some of these include ensuring that collection containers provided by haulers are color coded and used for this specified material. So that would be blue for recycling, green for organic, and I believe it's black or brown for garbage. Thank you, Lisa. We have to develop and implement an edible food recovery program that recovers edible food from designated commercial edible food generators for human consumption. Review requests for and approve commercial waivers that meet requirements, and ensure that education and outreach is conducted to all affected parties, including generators, haulers, facilities, and edible food recovery organizations. Since 2018, staff here in town has utilized money from the Zero Waste Marin Grant Fund to contract R3 Consulting and utilize their expertise on a lot of technical assistance projects and education projects that are related to mandatory commercial organics recycling for businesses and multifamily residential property complexes within Corte Madera. And last year, we developed a project scope that was focused on education and outreach collateral that can be provided to businesses and residents as required by AB 1826 and SB 1383. So we've been very proactive on the upcoming changes, and we're going to continue to do so with in this fiscal year through the help of R3 using the same Zero Waste Marin grant funding. So adoption of this ordinance is required by January 1st, 2022, but we don't have to enforce until January 1st, 2024. And failure by the town to enact and undertake all SB 1383 responsibilities may result in fines up to $10,000 per day. So with that, I'm gonna let you all ask any questions, and Lisa Coelho will go over any of the changes in the ordinance that you might have questions on.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lorraine, and thank you, Lisa, as well. Do we have any questions from council members for staff? Let's start with Leila.
Just a quick one. Thanks, Lorena. So I know you said it has to be enacted by January 1st, 2022, but it doesn't have to be enforced until 2024. Is there something in the ordinance that says it won't be enforced until 2024, or is that just sort of an optional thing?
It is in the ordinance. I can look at the page if you'd like, but it is detailed. All jurisdictions basically have the same requirements, so everyone will start enforcement on that same year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks, Leila. Any other questions? And if not, I just have a question that I think is kind of related to this. Does this touch on Corte Madera as an agency, like our own waste collection and sorting? Because I know, like, for example, like I live across the street from San Clooney Park, and there are no, I don't think, at least there are trash cans that don't also have recycling and compost. I'm not sure if there are recycling and compost cans elsewhere in the park or elsewhere in other parks, but I think in a lot of our public spaces, we don't have, this kind of like waste diversion infrastructure set up. And I don't know what it would take to get there, but I feel like that's kind of part of like walking the walk when we're asking residents and businesses to take these steps. So if you guys could speak to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, we've actually been working on that. We used to have Conservation Corps of the North Bay provide the recycling bin, basically containers. And then we terminated that contract and bought our own recycling bins that have been placed mostly in Town Park. And we have been using grant money for that from Cal Recycle to purchase them. We still need a few that we need to purchase to place in other places like San Clemente Park, which you just mentioned. And it was before doing all of the purchasing, we did meet with Mill Valley Refuse Service, myself and our assistant superintendent, to discuss this. And they mentioned that there is a lot of contamination. People end up putting their trash in recycle bins, but because it is something that we should be doing, like you said, we should be modeling what we're expecting our residents to practice. We have been slowly moving into putting those recycle bins in our parks. There is also a shortage because of COVID. I haven't been able to get, we don't want to have different kinds of recycle bins in in different areas. We want some consistency. So I've been working on that. And then as for the organics, we don't have any bins at this time. We're not able to use the grant funding to purchase like a combination bin. It has to be recycling only from that grant. But there is also the issue that the organics bins attract a lot of rats, and then that starts to become a bigger issue that then our maintenance staff has to address. So right now we're sticking to trying to get recycle bins everywhere and then move on to the next phase.
Okay, thanks, Lorena. I just ask if we can find a way forward on organics in public spaces. I think that's really important, possibly even more so than recycling from a climate perspective, because when you throw organic material like food into a into a landfill, where it decomposes in an anaerobic environment, it releases methane instead of carbon dioxide, which is a much more powerful greenhouse gas. So I would love to see us, if there's a path forward that we can identify, let's go for it. And if you need to come back to the council at a later time and seek support from us, then please do. But anyways, thank you for answering my question. Any other questions from council members on this? And if not, we're going to go ahead and open this up to the public. So any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on this ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor Beckman. Yes, we did receive one emailed public comment on this item that was sent to council members and uploaded to the website earlier today. Oh, because it wasn't sent to public comment at tcmmail.org. Just a moment. I will open that. Okay. This email is from Karen Herzog, who says a couple of recommendations. What I think would be really helpful for the town is to have, in the similar way we do the neighborhood emergency captains, is to have a neighborhood recycling captain on each block. They would be responsible for going door to door to make sure people know exactly how easy it is to use the green can for food waste and show what is not recyclable to each household. For example, I'm sure many people just keep waste on the counter and get lazy and throw it in the trash. But I wheel the green can right next to my kitchen door and I just toss all of my food into there. Additionally, we could have that person help with group buys for bulk produce so people don't buy everything in those non-recyclable items from Trader Joe's. Speaking of that, they have the most waste producing operation that I have ever seen, which leads to my second proposal. Maybe the town needs a committee to meet with each restaurant and grocery store, mandatory or twice a year, so that each business knows what we are committed to. Both Trader Joe's and Nugget are using non-recyclable plastic capsules for all of their salads, produce, etc. The Japanese restaurant is using completely non-biodegradable packaging. Which brings me to my last point, which is that I think it would be nice to provide a financial incentive for restaurants in particular to switch to compostable packaging. Even if we only gave them a few $100s a month, it would make a huge difference on something that honestly doesn't have a lot of margin. With the pandemic still going on, people are still getting a lot of food to go. I would be happy to serve in any capacity the town needs for this. Karen Herzog. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you so much, Karen, for that helpful comment. Not seeing any other hands up from the folks on the line, so we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring this item back to the council for discussion and a possible motion. Who'd like to start us off? Anyone have any thoughts to share? And if not, we would welcome a motion. Fred.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion or make the motion.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do we have a second? Looks like Bob. Great, thank you, Bob. And Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Monken,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Lorena, and thank you, Lisa, appreciate it. And that brings us to item 6 on tonight's agenda, our business items. Our first business item is 6A, which is a presentation and discussion from the Town of Corte Madera Parks and Rec Department on their needs assessment. And I'm going to turn it over to our staff and their consultants.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the Town Council, for the opportunity to speak with you today. First, the presentation and discussion of the Town of Corte Madera Parks and Recreation Needs Assessment. And the recommended action for this item is the Town Council receive, discuss, and provide feedback on the results that you'll hear today from the Community Needs Assessment. And that's a presentation for you by ETC Institute and they'll provide further direction for staff. A little bit of background is that in February of 2021, the Parks and Recreation Department sought out companies to administer a community needs assessment survey and analyze that data to support the Parks and Recreation Master Plan process. And 4 companies evaluated the request for proposal and were invited to a Q&A with staff and the subcommittee. And from that, in March, ETC Institute was awarded the contract based on their extensive experience, expertise, along with their proprietary methodology for helping communities prioritize investment opportunities. And the analysis that you'll hear tonight will be used to guide community engagement discussions related to enhancing infrastructure, facilities, and programs for the next 3 to 10 years. The community engagement plan is to conduct 2 to 3 focus groups via Zoom between November and December and host 2 in-person meetings in January of 2022. And staff is also exploring costs for the consultant to facilitate those community engagement events in order to most effectively utilize the assessment results and guide constructive conversations from a neutral position. And additional information regarding the town master plan process is available on our website, and that information is in the staff report. And there is no fiscal impact related to our request tonight to receive and discuss and provide further direction. And the options are receive, discuss, and provide feedback on the needs assessment presented by ETC Institute, or provide further direction to staff. And so now I'll turn it over to Ryan Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get this presentation going here. There's a lot to cover this evening. I want to make sure I'm mindful of everybody's time, so I'll be running through these slides relatively quick. I think there's maybe 50 here. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get going. My name's Ryan Murray. I'm sorry, I'm kind of battling a cold here. I was trying to chew my cough drop before I unmuted there. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Research for ETC Institute. We're based out of Olathe, Kansas, and although we're based in kind of a small offshoot of the Kansas City metropolitan area, we're really known as the gold leader for market research for local government organizations. And as you can see by this map, we do work all over the country, including in your area, Oregon, Washington, all throughout California, and really all throughout the United States, including a lot of work in Australia, Africa, and Latin America as well. So we're proud to be here. We're happy to be here, and we'll get the results going. So tonight we're going to talk about the purpose of the survey, the methodology, and we'll discuss any major findings from the survey. And then at the very end, I can take any questions that anybody might have. The survey was really administered as a part of the larger town's master plan development process. And the purpose of the survey was really to objectively assess usage, satisfaction, but most importantly, the purpose of the survey is to help identify opportunities for improvement. So beyond the improvement, there's some opportunities for development or ways to better serve leisure and recreation needs. And we do that throughout our important satisfaction analysis to help identify areas that could be improved to improve overall satisfaction, which is very high, but also with our priority investment ratings, which is really used to help develop a comprehensive list of potential current and maybe some past amenities, programs, facilities, and things like that can really help better serve those leisure and recreation needs of the community. And so although the results of the survey were very positive, the purpose of the survey was to help identify those opportunities. So that's what we've done. It was a 6-page survey, a little bit shorter than most of our surveys. Most of our parks and recreation surveys that go out are about 7 pages, and that's because the priority investment rating questions usually take up pretty much a full page. So in order to kind of fit everything in, We usually go with a 6 or 7 page survey. It took about 15 or 20 minutes for most town residents to complete. And we mailed that survey to all town residents, but that survey was also available to all town residents online for those folks who maybe had issues with the mail or maybe passed on the paper survey, but wanted to make sure to participate. The overall goal for the sample size and the goal that I would set for the size community that Corte Madera is would be 400 completed surveys. We greatly accomplished that goal. Almost doubled that goal, created 685 complete responses in our database, which gives us a margin of error of about 3.6% at the 95% level of confidence, which really means that if we were to have conducted the survey 100 times, 95 out of those 100 times, we're going to get these same results, plus or minus our margin of error of about 3% when all respondents answered those questions. Here's what we learned. We learned that most residents, almost 3 out of 4, indicated they're satisfied with the overall value received from the town's Parks and Recreation Department, a very high number. Only 6.1% of respondents gave any kind of dissatisfied response. So we're really good when it comes to, hey, please rate your overall value that you're receiving from their Parks and Rec Department. Almost 75% of folks are saying, hey, I'm satisfied or very satisfied. The town park and the town park plaza were really the most used town parks over the last couple of years. And those folks who indicated they've not used the town's community center or recreation center and parks, really the main barriers for that participation or usage is lack of programs or items that interest them. Either that or they're unfamiliar with programs offered at the community recreation center, or it lacks features the respondents want to use. And we help combat those barriers questions. We want to know why you're not using or participating from those folks who indicated that they've never participated in a program or used one of your facilities or amenities. And we really want to understand how we can combat that. Most of the time in learning and leaning on our past experience, it's really a lack of information or a lack of programs they believe are offered by the town, causing their disinterest or their lack of participation. And what we want to do with some of the survey questions is understand how we should be communicating with folks. And we've done that as well. So later on in the presentation, we'll discuss some of those items, and those can really close those barrier gaps that we see at the bottom of our screen there. As I mentioned, the results of the survey were very positive when it came to overall ratings and satisfaction, but the purpose of the survey was to help really improve the Parks and Recreation offerings of the town. The important satisfaction analysis is something it's an analysis designed to pinpoint service level items. So we basically ask residents to rate their satisfaction with the list of items that the town currently provides. And then we ask residents to indicate which items should be of the highest emphasis or the highest importance over the next few years. And what we found and what we find in high performing organizations or healthy Parks and Recreation organizations is that bathrooms are kind of at the top of that list. And had the community been in a really poor place or some ill health when it came to the Parks and Recreation organization, we would have seen a lot of other items at the top of this list. But seeing town park bathrooms at the top of this list is actually a good sign. It means folks are kind of nitpicking some of those amazing amenities and features that you all offer throughout the town. The priority investment ratings is really designed, again, to help identify areas where there's unmet need in the community, whether that's for facilities and amenities, programs and events, or that far right column there is event programming. Some of those administered and conducted by the town, some of those just using town facilities are required to be held by the town. So we'll go through all of those findings as well. First, I'd just like to start again with those perceptions, the satisfied ratings. As we indicated before, almost 75% of respondents were either very satisfied. In fact, 1 out of 5 of your residents walking down the street would indicate they're very satisfied with the value they receive from the town of Corte Madera Parks and Recreation Department, which is just outstanding. Every 1 out of 2 residents would indicate that they're at least satisfied. So we're doing a very good job in that sense. Only 1 out of 5 residents are neutral, which really indicates that most of those folks probably took this question maybe a little bit too literal and just aren't sure what the tax burden or what that value is that they're receiving. So a lot of folks in the very satisfied or neutral category, and again, less or about 6% of folks in that dissatisfied column. So most folks, again, very satisfied with what you're offering in terms of parks and recreation amenities and facilities. In terms of the Parks and Recreation offerings, we asked residents to indicate their level of agreement with various statements regarding what the town is offering. And what we found based on the sum of strongly agree and agree responses, most respondents believe that the Parks and Recreation Department is a valuable public resource and enhances the quality of life, preserves green space, and provides areas of natural beauty, and just a lot of top-notch things there, a lot of marketing opportunities, things that the Parks and Recreation Department can use to kind of respond to and help kind of connect with residents. And I like that 91% of residents indicated, or about 90% indicated that the Parks and Recreation offerings are accessible to all residents, and 91% said it strengthens the community. So a lot of folks on board with what you're doing, and they believe that they're very satisfied with what you're offering currently. We also asked respondents just general usage and attitudes for some of the facilities and amenities. We asked in a typical year, approximately how often you visit or use the town's community recreation center. About 40% of folks said never, about 40% of folks said several times a year, with some of those other respondents kind of falling in between there. But about 62% of residents indicated they'd visited at least once in a typical year. When residents were asked how to rate the town's community recreation center, it was just those folks who indicated they'd visited in the past or in a typical year. Only less than 3%, and given our margin of error, just very few folks in the community would give that poor rating there. But most folks, almost 70% of those who indicated they'd used it, gave it a good or excellent rating, which means you're doing a very good job there. Again, barriers, we asked, why haven't you? So we want to know, if you have, how would you rate it? And if not, what's that barrier? What's keeping you and the members of your household from really utilizing that facility? It's a lack of programs you're interested in or unfamiliar with the programs offered, and potentially a lack of amenities kind of stemming out from that particular table as well. And we'll kind of address those again when we get to the communications pinpoint here later in the presentation. Along with the Community Recreation Center, we asked approximately how often they use or visit town parks. This is a significantly higher number, with about 92+% of respondents indicating in a typical year they've at least used one of those town parks at least once. We asked residents to rate those facilities in which they'd visited. As you can see there, a majority of the responses are either excellent or good ratings, with just a couple of those items receiving about 1 out of 5 respondents who indicated they'd visited that item or that area as fair, but very few poor responses from any of these. And I know some of your major parks towards the top there are also the most used. So just keeping in mind, those responses towards the top of this list probably have more respondents in each column, or excuse me, in each row, than those areas at the bottom of that list. So again, just kind of keeping that in mind, a large number of respondents gave excellent or good responses to those items. We also asked respondents, and keep in mind that this is very few respondents. It's only 7% of our overall sample, indicated that they lack features that they want to use. That's the main barrier for not having visited a town park in a typical year, or they use parks or trails in other cities. And again, marketing and messaging and communication are really going to be the keys to combating some of those lack of features, or just those general, I'm not sure what's being offered, or the lack of familiarity. When we talk about Parks and Recreation facility program and activity ratings, this is really the very satisfied stuff. So this important satisfaction analysis, again, asking respondents to indicate their level of satisfaction with all of these items, all of these facilities, programs, and activities that are offered. I pointed out the top 3 items because those are also among the most important items here, as you can see at the top of this list. And what we do is basically we weigh out those items and determine which items are kind of above average dissatisfaction and below average, or excuse me, above average importance. And by pointing out the items that are kind of lower in satisfaction, higher in importance, those are the items that you should really focus on over the next few years if we want to try to increase the number of respondents who are satisfied or very satisfied with the overall offerings at the Parks and Recreation Department. And we've used this type of analysis for about 30 years now. And there's many communities across the country that use this analysis to actually improve some of their overall satisfaction ratings when it comes to overall value received for taxes and fees, and just overall satisfaction with the services provided by communities. So again, focusing on those items at the top of the list. And one thing I'd like to note is that the full methodology for the important satisfaction is found in the report. considering analysis is used nationwide, I'd be remiss if I did not indicate that none of the items were determined to be top priorities or high priorities according to the analysis, but those town park bathrooms should, along with the community center, should receive a little bit of emphasis, maybe an increase in service level over the next few years, just to maintain those levels of satisfaction that we see there. Facility and amenity priorities. Now this is getting into our priority investment ratings. This was a full page of questions that we asked respondents to indicate whether or not their household had a need for various parks and recreation facilities and amenities. As you can see to the right there, the percentage of households that indicated, yes, my household has a need, or someone in my household has a need for each one of these is indicated to the right. For each one of those facilities that folks indicated, yes, someone in my home has a need, we asked them, how well is your need currently being met, kind of regardless of in the town or not. We then asked respondents to indicate which 4 of those particular facilities or amenities are most important to your household. So right along the same lines as this important satisfaction, but really kind of funneling in just those respondents who indicate someone in their household has a need. Based on the analysis, we've determined that there are about 3 high priorities or top priorities. This is really high importance, higher unmet need. Some items in the continued emphasis area and lower immediate need at the bottom of that list. Those items in the green down below do not mean that we should strip funding or decrease service levels. It means that we're really offering those at a high level currently. Or if we're not currently offering those items, there's not much of a need or not a great need in the community. And the items in that pink or that top priorities is really going to be the biggest bang for the town's buck. And what that means is that the greatest number of households are going to receive the benefits from those particular items at the top. We did this not only for facilities and amenities, but for programs and event priorities. Same thing, we asked respondents to indicate if they had a need in their household, how well that current need is being met, which one of those items is most important to their household, and again, developing a list of top priorities. Again, those items in the pink, biggest bang for your buck, in the sense that you're going to hit the largest number of households by either improving or developing some of these programs and events. And same thing with that green at the bottom. We're going to just hit fewer households, or currently those needs are being very well met in the community, and there's no need for current service level improvements. We did this again for event programming and priorities. Again, just to kind of preface, not all of these are currently offered by the town, but we did include these to get a feel for how residents think or prioritize these particular items, with not just straight out asking, how would you prioritize, the 4th of July parade compared to the crab feed, and those types of questions. So here's again the percentage of households who said yes, how well their needs are being met, the prioritization they placed on those items, and the PIR, or the priority investment ratings. And again, as well as the important satisfaction analysis, the full methodology for this analysis, along with the full breakdown of those responses, can be found in the full report. Communication. One of the things that I feel like folks kind of get stuck on are those barriers. And one thing to keep in mind is about 40% of your residents indicated they'd never visited the community's recreation or community center. On the other hand, fewer than 7% of respondents indicated they'd never really visited a town park. So we're doing very well. Almost 3 out of 4 residents indicate they're satisfied with the overall value received. So we're doing very well, but it's always important to understand, how can we do better, or how can we close some of those awareness gaps? And really the main key to that is going to continue to be to focus on the mailed Parks and Recreation Activity Guide, marquees boards, community centers. And these are ways that residents currently learn about the Parks and Recreation activities and events. Next door, and then followed kind of down there at number 4 by word of mouth. We asked residents not only where they're getting their information, but how would they prefer to receive that information. And we see just a direct alignment to the mailed Parks and Recreation Activity Guide, with the marquee board at the community center and next door, rounding out the top 4. And one of the things that really came to the top of the list in the preferred items was the weekly town email newsletter, at about 41% of respondents selecting that as one of their top 3 choices, compared to about 40% of respondents saying that's one of the ways that they currently get information. So again, really working on bolstering or continuing to offer the mailed Parks and Recreation Activity Guide, along with weekly town e-newsletters, and maybe even creating some noise on Nextdoor to make sure residents have all of those outlets to use when looking for reasons to visit some of those facilities that they don't currently visit very often. We also asked a few questions about the Parkmandera Center. For those of you who are not aware, this is the little Google map dot there is the Parkmandera Shopping Center. It's directly adjacent to the town park, as well as that I always see this on this list because I was rehearsing earlier, the Pet Club Corte Madera, which is that pet supply store if anybody's there. But really, the purpose of these couple questions was just to make sure that we had a general sense or feel for how residents feel about that particular area. Some parks and recreation programming is already happening within that center, and survey residents were really asked to rate the importance of potential actions that could be taken to the Parkmandera Center. I've highlighted this top one because it's the one that residents indicated the highest levels that was very important or important to them, and that's repurposing the space for parks and recreation facilities and programs, with about 60% of respondents indicating very or important to that response. Please note that it also did have the fewest level of not important or not at all important responses from all of the items on the list. When we asked residents to indicate the 2 items that they would most support the town taking, again, 40% or so of respondents indicated they'd be in favor of the town repurposing that space for parks and recreation facilities and programs. So again, another alignment towards the top of this list when we ask these 2-tiered questions: how important is it? And which ones would you most support? So again, just another alignment there, making everything just a little bit easier to kind of digest and understand what folks are trying to tell us. We also asked a couple of questions, really a 2-part question about funding opportunities. We asked residents if they'd be willing to financially support future improvements to town of Corte Madera parks and recreation programs, facilities, and then if so, what ways? So we had about 1/3 of respondents select all of the yes responses. This was a multi-choice response. About 10% of folks said don't know, 4% of folks indicated they had some other type of financial support or revenue stream that they'd like to offer, and about 1/4 of residents said, hey, no, I'm not willing to financially support future improvements. When we asked those folks who indicated yes, either through increased fees or facility programs, yes through a special tax or assessment, or yes through a tax deductible donation, they were filtered to question 15A, which basically just asked how much would you be willing to contribute. Most respondents indicated that they'd be willing to at least provide $100 to $499. But if we add up that in the next highest category, that $500 to $1,000, we've got much more than a majority who are willing to at least contribute $100, even up to $5,000 or more than $5,000, according to this pie chart. And again, just keeping in mind, that's about just those residents who indicated yes to the previous chart again. In summary, everything's very good according to residents in the town. The priority investment ratings were meant and designed and developed within the survey instrument to determine and pinpoint items that could be implemented or improved in the community to serve unmet needs. The important satisfaction analysis determined that town park bathrooms was really the highest priority for improvement, which again are one of those amenities or one of those items that we see in some of the most high performing large parks and recreation organizations throughout the country. And overall, almost 3/4 of your residents are indicating that they're satisfied with the value received from the town parks and recreation offering, which is just phenomenal. It's again, I always try to put it into perspective. You walk down the street with a group of 4 people, at least 3 of those people are going to say, hey, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with what I'm receiving there. So continued focus on the mailed activity guide and other high visibility communication methods, such as that weekly e-news letter, as well as those marquee boards and trying to get on Nextdoor to some extent, is really going to help close the barriers gap, improve the overall usage gap that we really only see in the facilities and not in your town parks. Only 7% of respondents aren't using those town parks or don't typically in a normal year, which is a very small number. So just kind of keeping that in mind, things are very positive. There are a few improvements that can be made. The priority investment ratings determined a number of items that are really going to be important in the future. Looking 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Some of those items I know in the facilities amenity column you're not currently offering, but could begin looking into. Some of those programs and events I know that you could easily offer or are currently offering. We just need to continue to maintain those. And the event programming just gives everybody in Parks and Recreation a pretty good idea about how they prioritize some of those special events that the town is at least hosting, if not completely offering themselves. With that, I'll keep my presentation open just for now. I'm going to expand this little screen here with everybody's faces, and I'll take any questions if anybody's got any questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Thank you to you and your team. I also want to thank Ashley and her staff, and also our current and former Parks and Rec commissioners, many of whom are with us tonight. Thank you guys all for making this happen. We will start with questions for staff and the consultants from council members. And Ryan, I might actually ask you to unshare your screen if you wouldn't mind, just so that I can see our full council here.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, sir. All right, so we'll start with questions from the council for Ryan or staff members on this presentation. Fred.
Yeah, on the survey, do you know how many were Corte Madera residents, or were they all Corte Madera residents that responded?
Yeah. So great point. Something that I did fail to mention earlier. The survey was made available to non-town residents who'd participated or signed up with the town to participate in a program. So Ashley and her team were able to provide a list, and they emailed the link to the survey out to those folks. Everything presented tonight, all 685 respondents, were verified town of Corte Madera residents.
And I think it was in there, how did you address, or how did the survey address COVID? I think you used typical year, that kind of verbiage.
Yeah. So when we asked about participation or usage, it was in a typical year, just to make sure that folks weren't thinking, hey, in the last 6 months, I haven't used it all, but in a typical year, I would have used X number of times, or still maybe that never column.
Okay. And then one last question is, believe in there, it mentions Bayside Trail, correct? I guess how do we define Bayside? There's Bayside Park, which is much more smaller. Bayside Trail to me means Paradise all the way down to Warrenham, that whole trail. Is that what we're talking about when we say Bayside Trail?
Yeah, I might let Ashley chime in on that, just because I'm not exactly familiar with the trail, although I know it was included in the survey. I'm not exactly sure if we defined it like you're talking.
We didn't specifically define it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So respondents could interpret what length that they might be utilizing it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Fred. Any other questions? Leela.
Thanks, and thanks, Ryan and Ashley. This is really great information. I just had a quick question about who returned the survey. And I saw that when you said you got 685, and those are verified town residents. Do we have any demographic information just in terms of, what the profile was of the people that actually returned the survey?
Yes, usually in this circumstance, when we have the community at large take the survey, and again, usually my sampling plan would call for not all town residents receiving the survey. So the goal of 400 would have meant maybe 2,500 households would have received the survey, or fewer than the total number of households in the community at the very least. Because we did send it out to everybody, we know that some groups are much more likely to respond to the surveys, but the demographics did accurately mirror the town's demographics based on the most recently available Census Bureau estimates. So again, this was kind of before the Census Bureau numbers came out for 2020, but we're using the most accurate and up-to-date 2019 ACS data. I believe that's the American Community Survey that's maintained and uploaded online by the Census Bureau.
Great, thank you. And just one follow-up, if you don't mind. How did you handle partial responses? If people answered some of the questions, but not others, did you toss their whole survey, or did you just leave that question blank, or how was that handled?
Yeah, so any paper surveys that would have come back partially completed, we would have included those. So if somebody got halfway through or didn't want to include the demographics, we would have included that. And the primary reason was that on the paper surveys, your home address was printed on that survey. So we knew exactly where you were coming from. On the online survey, if you didn't complete the survey all the way through, you didn't get to the validation question to enter your home address. So we could then match that to those folks that we mailed to. So unfortunately, any incomplete surveys online were not included in the final sample.
Great, thanks, Leela. Great questions. Any other questions from council members? Oh, Charles.
To follow up about the demographics. So what I didn't see is I saw that basically we're missing a group and they don't feel that we're getting the right programming. Is it ultimately that you see statistically an understanding of the demographics? Was there a bias towards a certain group that isn't being met? Or was it just across the board, everybody just wants more programs, right? Like, do they need to be targeted programs? Because it didn't get to that kind of specificity And I think that's where I was really searching for answers from the data a little bit more to understand what kind of programs ultimately they were not being met with, and who are those people in particular. So,
do you know which question you're referring to exactly?
Yeah, so if you go back towards the beginning, and it was under programs and areas not being met. So I have it to, let's see here. It was page 6, it was reasons households have not visited the town's community recreation center, and those type, there was a few different questions like that on page 6. So like 50% of the people said it's because of lack of programs that they're interested in. So I didn't know if that was one grouping of people, the demographics might help understand that if it was our senior population or our youth parents, or if it was across the board, because then it's a broader spattering of programs that might solve it. And I didn't come to a conclusion on that one. So that's
that's a great question. Are you talking again about, I'm guessing it's question 2B. I'm gonna go real fast. I've got
Q2B is part of
So let me see here. I'm looking now at some cross tabulations that we delivered to Ashley. It's a very comprehensive document, I guess is the nicest way to put it, about breaking down the respondents based by some of those demographic features. That includes household type as well as male-female breakdown. The item that received the highest level of selection based on those folks who indicated, yes, I've not visited, was that unfamiliar with programs offered. When you look through those tables, you really do see that as one of the primary considerations for all of those demographic groups. So within the cross tabulations, you can begin to formulate an idea that particular household types are selecting some responses at a higher frequency than other groups. But the most important thing to understand is that we wanted to understand just simply, why aren't you visiting? And the priority investment ratings was really developed to help then address those types of items that we know are usually the most selected. Hey, I'm just not aware of what's being offered, or you're not offering what I want. So now the priority investment rating question is arisen in the survey later on, where now you can tell me which ones you have a need for, that your needs not being met for that, and that it's really important to your household. So based on the priority investment ratings, Ashley and the town staff in the Parks and Recreation Department will know, hey, we really need to communicate with folks better about what we're offering. But beyond that, we should look at the priority investment ratings to understand what we should be offering that we may not be at the current time, to help close that gap. And then again, within 5 or so years, you should have built in some of the survey results into your planning. And then you should retouch base with the community to see if those barriers still exist and to what extent. Ashley mentioned before the presentation took place that there will be some community meetings. And whether or not I'm a part of those or not, those are a great opportunity to understand at a higher degree, after we've analyzed some of those cross tabulations, to see which groups are saying, hey, you're not offering what I want, or I'm not familiar with what you're offering, and then trying to pinpoint what some of those actual specifics would be.
Thank you.
Yep. But the cross tabulations, I think it's over 400 pages. It's kind of a gnarly document, but there's a lot in there, and you can really see column by column who's answering things differently, and it can give you a really good idea about really how you should be tackling some of these issues with different groups.
And that's also included in our packet and in the agenda, correct? Yeah. So
I'm not entirely sure if it's in the packet or agenda. I apologize. It's kind of an appendix to the report. Most folks aren't too interested in feeding through those cross tabulations.
I'll skim it now.
Yeah.
I'm happy to make those available upon request. We didn't want to upload it to the town website and crash it.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Charles. Good. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor. Just one other offer. Ashley, I've kind of explained this to you. ETC's, the reason that we've been in business so long, we're considered the gold standard of this research, is because folks like Councilman Charles Lee might have a question 6-8 weeks from now. He might say, hey, Ryan, can you run an additional crosstab? We don't change scope or say, hey, I can do that for $85 or something like that. We'll just run that additional analysis and talk to Ashley about it and have that discussion with you, Councilman Lee, if you'd like, and we can get through those things on our own together. And that's something I'd like to offer to everybody this evening as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Charles. Fred, did I see another hand from you?
Yeah, I think that may dovetail along what you just said, because I was going to ask if staff had any plans to, I want to say, drill down in the data from a demographic basis to try to nail it down further. But it sounds like that's something that your company would be willing to give to us as long as, sorry, as long as we can give you the parameters.
Definitely.
Okay. And the other question I have for staff is, I know at the town council planning meeting, one of the top priority items was bathrooms, town park. I don't know if it's the appropriate time or if you have an update on a short-term solution.
The short-term solution for the bathrooms and making them available at the community center. So right now we're open from 9 to 4, Monday through Friday, and we're in the process of hiring some part-time staff and a full-time staff member that can be available at the front desk so that the lobby is available. And then I'm also researching some temporary, nicer restrooms that can be on trailers, as well as some modulars, so that I can bring the council a full selection of opportunities to review.
Okay, and at some point, will you get some signage out directing people that those restrooms are open?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
And
And
thanks.
thanks.
Talk offline. You can provide more direction of where ideal signage might be.
Thanks. And I appreciate staff's quick response to that from that planning meeting. I think it was less than a month ago, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Fred. Any other questions from council members? And if not, I've just got a couple of quick questions. Well, the first is just I'll second the questions that my colleagues have asked. It would be helpful, I think, if we could take a look at needs and satisfaction through different like socioeconomic, racial, or like language lenses. I think that'd be helpful. And then the other question, this is pertaining to what I'm seeing as question 11 on page Roman numeral 9 of our report here. So question is percentage of households whose needs for each of the Corte Madera events and programs are being met less than 50%. I think I understand what this means, but I just wanted to clarify. So like to pick an event here, like the crab feed, if it says that 15.8% of households, I guess, are having their needs met less than 50% for this Lions Club crab feed event, does that just mean that like maybe they're attending the crab feed but would like to see more or different programming there? I'm just trying to understand what exactly that question means.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one because of the subject matter. So that 15% is based first on the percentage of folks who said, yes, I have a need for events such as the crab feed. And then just those folks from there that said, hey, 50% or less is being met. So to me, in the way that I would interpret this particular data, same with Oktoberfest, 4th of July, indoor yard sale, all of these items on this list, I would just suggest that there's a desire or a need for more like events. Not, hey, I need a crab feed every 6 weeks, but hey, I'd like some more community. I'd like some more community engagement every few weeks or every few months instead of the infrequency, maybe which we see those currently.
Do you have a list of the most popular and successful ones across the world that we could think about?
Yeah, so
and maybe a list of most popular shellfish if that's what we're lacking.
Yeah. So crawdads first. No, I'm just kidding. So really, it's something that we listed in the previous question, which was the weekly food truck events. That has become just the most popular thing around, along with movies in the park, and even combining those two items. Some communities have begun to use that as kind of an additional revenue stream. It doesn't take a lot of staff to actually man the event, but some you can really put those on at a more frequent pace. So really those Oktoberfest type events, those events where folks can come and gather and usually partake in some kind of food and drink activity. Is really where we're moving towards, we see nationally when it comes to special events and programming.
Great, thank you. I'll make one last call for questions from council members here before we open this up for public comment. Any last questions here? And if not, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. So any members of the public who would like to comment on this item are welcome to raise their hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org to ask questions or share your thoughts. Rebecca, did we get any email public comments on this needs assessment?
Let me just check once more. No, I did not receive any emailed public comments.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up from the public, so we'll close public comment and just bring this back to the council for any last discussion. I also know that we've got 2 Parks and Rec commissioners with us here tonight. So Eileen and Louise, thank you guys for joining us. I just wanted to also give you an opportunity to speak if you had anything that you wanted to share or draw our attention to or anything like that.
think the only thing that I would add here is that, this is an initial assessment quantitatively to understand where the community has interests. And there's a lot more information that we need to glean from conversations that we do through these focus groups and community engagement meetings. So we couldn't do everything and ask every question in the most detailed way in this survey. We wanted to get a broad sense of where the priorities were for the community and be able to ensure that we had that quantitative assessment to help us go into the next phase of qualitative digging to really understand, more nuanced needs for the community, where the passion points lie, where the most traction is for how we could invest going forward. So this is phase one of a broader effort. And I think that was, well articulated up front, but I just want to be sure that we keep this in context. It is quantitative, and that's incredibly important, but we need to do that overlay of incremental conversation with the community to get more detail.
Great, thank you so much. We'll take now any other thoughts or discussion points from council members who'd like to add any. We'll start with Bob.
Yeah, as you look at the events and programs that are most important to households, I think one of the things that's really interesting about that is those are all programs that are done by volunteer community organizations here in Corte Madera. 4th of July parade is Chamber of Commerce, concert series at Menke Park is the Community Foundation, Oktoberfest is beautification, Age Friendly does the speaker series, Lions do the crab feed, Women's Club does the yard sale. And I think it's a real statement to how our community organizations and volunteers work in this community and how important they are. And I also bring it up because I know we talked a lot at the council planning session about how we charge community groups for the loose use of the planning of the community center. And I think that's critical also, because clearly these groups are having a huge impact in the town, and we need to acknowledge that and keep that going and do what we can to work with them closely. Thanks.
Great point. Thank you, Bob. Other comments from council members? Fred.
Yeah, I have a question actually. So it sounds like you're going to be doing community meetings, and are you coming back to the council with recommendations next year sometime? Is that like the phase 2 part of it?
Yes.
Okay. And then those recommendations, are those related to programming, capital improvement projects, or it could be everything across the board?
Oh, yes, across the board. It would be both infrastructure and programming.
Okay. And would that be on a high level? In other words, would you come back recommending the town build a swimming pool or improve the community center?
I think our intent would be that we get to a little bit more specificity there about what the need is, why we want to do it, how we want to do it, and the time frame.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there may be more homework that needs to be done before something like that comes to town council, just to get that out there. The other thing is I noticed in here also, you may want to consider also is that I think there's a thing on here about trails and paths and steps. I'm not sure if that is park and rec related. To me, if we're talking Bayside Trail and the whole trail, if we're talking steps, to me, it's not park and rec. You may want to look at that one and see if it should be carved out. And again, it's your call, carved out and maybe put under, Bob may kill me, bicycle and pedestrian committee. It just seems like it may not be park and rec related. And you may need to have a conversation before you make a recommendation saying it doesn't belong to park and rec, because if you make that statement, you need to also add where it may belong. And the same thing, just to get it out there, I see a lot of items in here related to cultural, whether that be music, performing arts. I think that may be another one you may need to look at. And I don't know if that is under park and rec or not. I know Ashley and I had a conversation, I think about a month or so ago, and it's almost like, do we need something where we have a cultural affairs, I'll just say a cultural affairs person, or the chamber taking over that function. So it's all under one umbrella and it's not piecemealed out, but it's just called cultural affairs, which would include not just the musical part of it, but again, performing arts. Just for example, I know Redwood has a great drama department. During the winter time, it seems like a lot of stuff kind of goes dead. Should we be COVID is the one off key though. Should we be inviting, drama, Redwood's drama department to do some kind of performing arts at the community center? So I'm looking at this much more broadly than just music in Mickey Park and also in Town Park, but more on a broad basis, just to get that out there also. The other thing also is whatever we do, I think we need to look at everything on a town-wide basis. A lot of times I think we point everything to Town Park, and there's the east side of Corte Madera. So I know you mentioned, Ryan, I think like a lot of people like movies. If we're doing movies in the parks, it should be, if we do one in San Clemente or Town Park, but I think it needs to look equal again across the broad range of it, not just limited to Town Park. So those are my comments. But I appreciate all the hard work. I think this is great.
Great comments, Fred. Thank you. Let's go to Charles.
Yeah, so just because Fred brought it up, I mean, when it comes to the relationship of Parks and Rec and trails and just the town's relationship to the opportunity for trails, that is something I personally am not aware of all the opportunities, but I feel like there could be some and hidden gems. I especially when he brings up the east side, everybody thinks about the wetlands, but also there's all the connector and spurs up to Ring Hill that I think aren't fully understood in my mind. On how to access that and if there's development opportunities up there as well, because that is raw nature, or going up towards TAM and that type of thing outside of the general, so I would like to see more of that, Fred, because I don't know that really if that's really important, there might be new opportunities. And the other thing is I also hear you about the idea of community theater and that type of experience. That's an event that's really popular up on Mount Tam, Shakespeare out in the woods. I do recommend that as we move forward and think of new events or how to enhance our events, that they're not competitive against other localities. I think we've talked a little bit about that, but it's, I don't think we could do another art in the park kind of event, because Sausalito feel like owns the prime real estate for that, right? So just as we move forward, just those kind of ideas of what would make Corte Madera unique and really bring out the best parts of this community. So.
Great, thanks, Charles. Any other comments from council members?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Eli, I have two more.
Okay, okay, go ahead, and then we'll go to Leela next.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut Leela off. Two other things also. On CIP, capital improvement projects, you may want to consider and look at breaking them down into short-term, mid-term, and long-term. For example, I think there's a thing in here about adding more benches to the parks. I think that is more of a short-term type thing that Public Works may be able to do it within a fiscal year type thing. Something like a swimming pool, which you get into land use and there may be other issues. You have to couple that with the housing element that's coming up. That's more of a long-term project to me. Mm-hmm. And then the East Field, turning that into artificial turf, maybe a mid-size, mid-range type project. Because this way you can space them out. And again, instead of trying to do everything at once, that may take 3 or 4 years. Some of the smaller things may be able to get done somewhat quicker. And one other thing along something Charles was saying, also going back to the cultural events, remember that I think Todd or Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the town can use the village parking lot 10 or 12 times a year for community activities. So keep that in mind, because a lot of times like Oktoberfest, it feels, and I'm not promoting Oktoberfest moving there, it feels like Oktoberfest is growing out of that to a certain degree. The village has a huge parking lot, and I know when the Lions did the car show, it was really spaced out. The village loved it because it brought in business. So keeping that in mind, if you want to start doing larger type events, they have to be planned out, obviously, and you have to, discuss it with the village. But that is out there to be offered to the communities as an alternative. Thanks, Eli.
Great, thanks, Fred. Let's go to Leela.
Thanks. I was actually going to say something Fred touched on, which is just to think about if there are things that are sort of quick and easy and would provide a lot of benefit to the community, and if there's ways we can sort of not hold those up. while we're evaluating, the much bigger projects. I'm thinking especially of community events and coming out of COVID. I just think we really need those events to bring our community back together. And I take Bob's point about how, a lot of these great community events are put on by volunteer organizations, which is wonderful. But like, for example, Oktoberfest wasn't held this year. And sometimes there might be a lack of volunteers who are able to put something like that on. So I think there's really a space there where the town could, step in and support, providing some of those events from the town as well. And thank you for all you're doing. We appreciate it.
Great point. Thank you, Leela. Any other comments from council members? If not, I don't have too much to add myself, other than I'll just say this was a fantastic report here. Thank you guys so much. I in light of Louise's comments, I don't want to draw any hard conclusions from this because I realize that this is kind of the beginning, not the end of that process to understand what the needs and priorities of the community are. But this is already so helpful. This is such a just such an insightful first step forward. So I wanted to thank everybody who made this possible. Our staff, our Parks and Rec Commission, and their consultants. Thank you. With that, unless there are any other comments, I think we may be ready to accept this item and move forward. Any last comments from council members? All right, well then, thank you guys again so much. Really appreciate it. Fantastic report, fantastic presentation tonight. Ryan, I know it's no fun presenting with a cold, so thank you very much for taking the time to be here with us.
Yeah, thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. Thank you again. That concludes item 6A on tonight's agenda, and we're going to move on to 6B, which is discussion and possible authorization for the Public Works Director to purchase a water truck from United Rentals for $74,392, and I'll turn it over to staff.
Members of the council, I'm always amazed of how Ashley is able to multitask. She can do probably 4 or 5 things at once where I can't walk and chew gum. So I'm always just really fascinated about how she's able to get things done. So good job, Ashley and team. Well, this one isn't as exciting, but it is important. This has been an ongoing discussion with the public works staff and really with the drought, just understanding, jumping in and asking, the maintenance team, like how they're operating on a routine basis and any changes. And really, I think this is something even without the drought that we should have been considering using recycled water when we can, when appropriate. And so this recommendation for you today, I asked staff to go out and see what we're able to use. Right now, we're using a 2,000-gallon rental water truck. And you can see the analysis in the staff report. Really, it makes a lot of sense moving forward, I think, operationally to use something like this, not just through the drought, but moving forward. The total cost is $74,000. We really went up and down the state to look at buying a used vehicle or a newer truck. This makes the most sense for us. 2 things I do want to note with this is as we move forward, so in 2015, 2016, we've replaced our entire public works fleet. And so we're not due, the only vehicle that is due to be replaced will be our street sweeper probably in the next 2 to 3 years. Moving forward from to actually really last year at the council direction, our intent is on all new purchases with that fleet. And it'll start with that, with the street sweeper, we're looking to go electric, fully electric. And so working with TAM and others on EV vehicles from a public works perspective. And one of those things is putting the infrastructure in place. So as you know, we have the grant, we're in the process of working with PG&E and to get our building permit to install solar panels and battery backup at our maintenance site. And so that is a huge infrastructure piece as we move forward. This vehicle, it's not available in electric, so we can't meet that requirement. We have checked and have not found an EV vehicle that's a 2,000-gallon water tender truck. So the second piece, and it's been brought up in the past, the mayor has asked me a number of times when thinking about public works vehicles, is using the biodiesel. So this is a diesel truck. So currently within our fleet, we have a hauling truck that is diesel. Our street sweeper is diesel, and this vehicle is diesel. All 3 would be capable of using biodiesel. We don't have to do any adjustments to those vehicles. So we could do that. The issue for us is the closest biodiesel site is in Richmond. And so I think moving forward outside of this, and I think I from talking to the mayor, I think I know how you feel about it, is that we should probably look at potentially finding a way to have a tank, it may be on site, or really looking internally to our cohorts in Marin of other opportunities to fill using biodiesel fill. So that is what we'll do. I can't fully report on that now of what the costs are and what that would take, but we'll definitely do that. And I wanted to just give you some background that if we were allowed to purchase this vehicle, we'd have 3 diesel that are capable of biodiesel capabilities. Moving forward again on power shutoffs or any issues again in the storms, it would be helpful, as Councilmember Lee pointed out to me, that we have the availability to have diesel on hand and biodiesel, if that's the way we're going to go. To have something at our site would make a lot of sense. And then also we have the battery backup on site. You know, that street sweeper is one of the critical vehicles, you know, for responding during storms. This here, though, I think, you know, we have a lot of, you know, we have our center medians, we have a lot of trees and parks. There's a lot of usage for this, and it just makes a lot of sense. And just thinking about the expenditure of public funds, the Director of Public Works recommends that we do purchase this. I support it, and I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks so much, Todd. You hit on my only question. Do we have any questions from council members for staff here? Fred.
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. Does the truck, does it come with any warranty or anything like that, like 90 days or something goes wrong with it? I'm comparing it to a car, which I know it's 2 different animals.
We're going to purchase a warranty, and we do have an on-duty mechanic on site as well that helps us with our larger vehicles. But I do not know how long that warranty would be for, so I'll find out.
Okay.
We'll
And
do the best we can.
Okay. And another question also, I know it's not rated with respect to like fire department equipment or anything like that, but is this something that could be utilized in case there was a fire somehow through Central Marin Fire?
Yeah, I mean, it's a water tender, so you could, yes.
Okay, I'm just getting that out there because it just be something else that would further support Central Marin Fire if there was a fire and they needed additional equipment. And then the last question is, do we have any plans? I know we're using recycled water for public grounds. Would there be any consideration to offering that somehow, I don't know, through a charge system to businesses, like either the village or town center? And again, I'm not sure what that would look like.
Oh, you're thinking a joint like agreement where that we would give them access to, yeah. Yeah, that's a good, it's a really outside the box thought there, Mr. Vice Mayor. Yeah, we absolutely could. And we probably should. Yeah.
Yeah, it would just help them out. It's kind of like a win-win type thing, especially if we have the truck. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Fred. You're very good. You're always good at those creative solutions. Let's go to Leela next.
Thanks. I just had a quick question about where the water comes from. Like I think the county's been providing it recycled water this year, or I'm just wondering going forward, whatever source we're using, like do we feel confident that we would have future sources of recycled water so we'd be able to put the truck to good use should the drought continue?
Yeah, so the Central Marin Sanitation District, CMSA, is where we go. And so, yeah, that will always be available to us. Yeah, so that's it. So the only issue is we have to go to San Rafael to get it, but there's plenty of recycled water available to us now and in the future.
And I can also just add, Leela, because I represent us on the CMSA board, that that board is actively looking at expanding CMSA's production of recycled water and producing kind of like higher grade recycled water that's cleared for more applications. And then also Charles and I are sitting on the MCCMC water policy committee that just had its first meeting like last week. So going forward, the big kind of thrust of that committee is going to be looking at how we can kind of increase the production and usage of recycled water throughout Marin. So those I think are both relevant to your question. Great.
Just one other thing, just sorry, Mr. Mayor, just going back to the Vice Mayor's, outside the box thought, I just given it some thought and hearing from my town attorney as well. It would be something that we'd probably enter an agreement with someone, a third party like that, where we could provide it, but there would be a fee. Again, these are public funds, and But it's something I think they would be very interested in. They would save money at the end of the day, and it's the right thing. So just putting it out there, but we'll work with the town attorney and moving forward. And if we're able to do this and make agreements like that, it's a really good idea.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Any other questions from council members? And if not, we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. So any member of the public who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments on this item?
No, Mayor Beckman, we did not receive any emailed comments on this item.
Great, thank you. And I don't see any hands up, so we'll close public comment and bring this back to the council for any other thoughts and possible motion.
I would move that we authorize the purchase of this truck in the amount specified in the staff report.
Great, thank you. Bob, I saw your hand. Did you want to share anything?
I was just going to say, we've got 18 inches of rain on Tam this October. I would not count that on that in the future. We should absolutely do this. So I will second Leila's motion.
Perfect, thank you. And Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mongan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you. And that brings us to item 6C, which is discussion and authorization for the mayor to sign a comment letter from the town council to the California Citizens Redistricting Commission regarding concepts for our congressional district and how it may change through the redistricting process.
Thank you, Mayor Beckman and members of the council. This item, as I emailed about earlier, is evolving. And I did send out an email with a new version of a letter that was sent out by the county today on behalf of new visualizations that were released yesterday afternoon that show slightly different configurations of a possible redistricting of our congressional district. And that has also been uploaded to our website and made available to the public. But the California Citizens Redistricting Commission is a body that is convened and seated every 10 years upon release of census data. And that body's purpose is to evaluate the state's districts and make any changes based on census numbers and draw new district boundaries that would provide fair and equitable representation for the citizens of the state of California. For us, that has, well, first I should say visualization is not a draft map. It's basically a representation of a possibility that the commission has asked to see in picture form based on comments received over the summer. They've had public comment open on their website throughout the last few months where residents could go online and use their map drawing tool to state what their potential communities of interests are and how they should be looked at and factored into possible new district boundaries. A community of interest is defined in the California Constitution as a population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. The issue that the county has with this potential boundary that was drawn in the latest visualization is that it removes Marin from Sonoma and the coastal counties to the north up to the Oregon border and moves it with Napa and portions of Solano County and also Petaluma, which is part of Sonoma County, into a new congressional district that may not take into account our community interests of coastal dwelling, environmental interests. And in the latest map that came out yesterday, they removed parts of Yolo County or parts of Solano County and then incorporated Lake County instead. I don't know if it would be helpful to show you the map or if you have it in front of you, but my question for council this evening is if first council is interested in having the mayor work with staff to work on a letter to send similar to what the county sent in on October 28th, and then they sent another version of a letter again today. And if council did want the mayor to work with staff on this letter, was there interest in making that authorization open-ended so that we could then take any future letters that the county sends and turn around and send out additional letters of support or opposition for visualizations as they come up. The draft maps are due November 15th, and then the final maps will be must be approved by December 27th. So this will come up relatively quickly in the next 2 weeks as November 15th is rapidly approaching, and we don't know the schedule with which they will release additional visualizations, but we wanted to be able to respond quickly if they do. I think that is it, and I'm available for questions. I can show a map if it's helpful that shows the current congressional district boundaries overlaid with the the current visualizations that are currently being discussed by the commission, if that's helpful.
Would you mind just running us through them super fast?
Yes, I can do that. All right, let's see. Are you looking at this map that shows the current congressional boundaries?
Yes.
Okay, if I click this overlay shows the visualization currently being looked at. And if I delete the current day boundaries, you can see that Marin is removed from the North Coast Congressional District and then incorporated with Napa, portion of Solano, and then all of Lake County there. And another visualization that might be helpful. This is the letter that I uploaded that the Board of Supervisors sent today. This was the visualization that was released last week. And this is the visualization that they're looking at this week. And it shows a little better with the contrast of the different colors. Does that give you a sense of the discussion?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Great. Okay, well, thank you, Rebecca. We'll go ahead and take any questions from council members on this item. Anybody have any questions? Leela.
Thanks. I'm just curious, what's the sort of interaction between the Redistricting Commission and the counties? Like, do we have any, communication from them, sort of what's driving this change, or, what sort of factors they're looking at that's making them sort of come up with this different visualization? Or is it really just that they kind of publish stuff and then we can write letters and comment?
I think it's the latter. It's my understanding that they took public comment throughout the last few months of various community members writing in saying that their community would be better suited or better represented if it were merged in with this community or that community. I don't think it's being driven by us, but the county, when the county sent their letters out to each of the city's representatives, they strongly urged cities to weigh in as quickly and as frequently as possible, because more comment early on will help hopefully drive the process later down the road as they fine tune these maps and move toward approving maps on November 15th. But I don't think they have reached out to us. Todd may know something different.
Alrighty, sounds good. Any other questions from council members? And if not, we'll go ahead and open this up to the public. So any members of the public who'd like to comment on this, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And I'll ask Rebecca if we got any emails on this item.
Thank you. And I'm refreshing now. While I refresh, I also wanted to ask if there was any input on any personalization we could do with the letter beyond what the county wrote, which was excellent. No, I'm not seeing any emailed public comment on this item.
Great. Oh, Amy?
I can just add that the commission has divided California into outreach zones, and there are 2 commissioners assigned to each outreach zone to do some outreach and they do hold a series of public meetings, but I don't think it is directed specifically toward counties.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up from the public, so we'll close public comment and bring this item back to council for any comments. Yeah, Bob.
Having done this for a while, our interests clearly lie with other coastal counties. They have been for years. They will continue to be in the future. The county's on exactly the right track here. And I would absolutely support authorizing the mayor and staff to work with the county to support this. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from council members? Fred, and then Charles.
I'll just second what Bob said. I agree that I think we should move forward with the letter and have you work with staff to make any adjustments that are needed down the road. It seems like it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a coastal community Marin intermixed with inland communities. It seems like there's going to be totally different interest. So it doesn't make any sense at this point in time. So I can support it.
Thanks, Fred. Charles?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, because I think this is an important topic. We saw the presentation at the MCCMC where the county really got to speak more to these kind of areas of shared interest, right? And how traditionally we've aligned with the coastal communities. The other thing is, if you look at that map and then you read about the kind of design tenets of how to group a group of voters and communities, you know, there's a really thin little bridge of 37 that connects those two. I think it's a real stretch. And when you start seeing stretches like that, you know that they're up to no good. You know, and I think we've even had discussions about that inside this county moving forward with the districts and our relationship and where we sit in our assembly district, you know, in our district. So I definitely like a more, you know, closer knit group that really your representative goes with the full body of who is has voted for them to go support our initiatives. So it's a no-brainer to write a letter that also helps support our county's efforts. So
thanks, Charles. Any other comments from council members? And if not, I'll just share that I agree. I think peeling Marin away from the coastal communities seems kind of crazy, but especially from Sonoma, which we're so intertwined with. So I completely agree with everybody's comments here and would support this as well. And if Rebecca, do we need to vote on this? Okay, sounds good. So Bob, did you make a motion, or if not, would somebody like to make a motion? Bob is muted, but he's making a motion, it appears, and Fred seconds. Excellent. Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Thank you. Councilmember Lee?
yes.
Councilmember Mongan?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
You're muted, Bob.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casissa?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes, thank you very much. That concludes our business items for tonight and brings us to item 7, which is our council reports, and we'll start with the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just 2 quick updates. The first is I want to just publicly recognize our public works maintenance team. Again, they really showed up and delivered for us. You know, you go through all these. We're on, the mayor and I were on Supervisor Rodoni's call, and he was going through like all the things we've been through in the last like 20 months, and everything's extreme. And then once you get there, you finally get rain, and it actually, I thought that rainstorm in that period of time was similar to the 1983 storm that devastated our town, but it turns out it was one of the worst storms, I think, going back over 130 years ago. And for us, it's a reminder of our $20 million infrastructure that we built for storm related issues to protect us. And in our town, when the high tide hits high winds and an excessive amount of rainfall, that's our worst, you know, that's the worst for us because it impacts us in multiple ways. And so if you think about our town, we have 19 pump stations, you know, 9, I believe, are sanitary district pump stations. The rest are flood control. So those are all backup generators. But when you hit over 7 feet, some of those areas are below the water level. They take out our generators and they start to flood. And so when that happened, we had our entire public works maintenance team on staff. We had 4 additional contractors assisting us, working with CMSA and the sanitary district side of it for 20 hours. They went 20 hours straight, went in teams, and they didn't miss a beat. And it's important to note that if they weren't on scene, if one of those pump stations went down, it would take out potentially entire neighborhoods. And so, you know, it's really a fine line, and it goes to the work that we never see, you know, behind the scenes. But it also reminded us that we got lucky because, you know, this storm surge was expected to be and the high tide was expected to be about 5.5, maybe 6 feet. It went to, the surge actually pushed it to 7. And so if we would have, for instance, had a storm surge of another foot, which is very possible, we would have a different result. And so it's a fine line for us. And it's a reminder that we're not done with our adaptation. We're not done with our work, you know, of the assessment that we completed. You know, the Paradise Drive project that is coming to you is multimodal, and it's important for bike and pedestrian through that corridor. But it's also, there's adaptation of that to raise a portion of that roadway by 2 or 3 feet, so we don't lose emergency access and access to that portion of our community. And it also positions us as we move forward to continue the conversation of things that we need to do to protect the east side of our community. And I just want to really point it out, but I want to give our team a lot of props. They've also, you know, we have battery backup at all of our major intersections. And so we just don't rely on a blinking light to go out, you know, and put up stop signs. We have battery backup, and we also have generator capabilities for all those intersections. So whenever you see a storm that's going to last more than 10 hours, assume that you have 10 to 12 bodies out in Corte Madera, you know, protecting our community. And so that's the public works maintenance team. So I really want to give them props, along with our fire department and police department. They really worked well. We have a newer team across the board on those 3 departments. And so this was the first major storm that really gave them an opportunity for 3 different shifts to work together, to communicate, to identify those areas that you all know that always flood and have problems. Well, they got to learn together too. So we learned a lot from this and how we can be better. And I think it was just good overall for our team to prepare and remind us that we do flood, we do have storms, we need to be prepared. And the last part is the town attorney's office is working closely with me and with RJ and Public Works, really focusing on the hillsides as well. You know, Christmas Tree Hill, especially Chapman Park, you know, to start to look at those areas of our flood areas, of having agreements with residents to ensure that we don't have mudslides, to ensure that we have the right drainage and we're doing the things possible to support our residents, to protect the hillside. So there's a lot of work going on there, and I really appreciate the work of Amy with that. And the last piece, just in case any of you are asked, we're about a month away from completing our PG&E study. We've been working closely with Efren, our consultant. I've been giving the mayor updates, and he has been providing me feedback as well. And we've been working with the leadership team of PG&E as well. And so really this survey that we're completing, this study, what it's going to do is it's going to identify and really spell out our strengths and weaknesses of our infrastructure from a utility standpoint in our high risk areas in the entire town, actually. So it's just not high risk, it's the entire town. And using the decision-making matrix of PG&E on how they replace an underground lines. Two pieces we're finalizing right now. The town is about to put out a survey to the community. It might not have the questions that you would anticipate, but it's important because that is part of the PG&E decision-making matrix. It's 8 questions. We're gonna mail that out and send it out social media to the community at the end of the week. And so we're gonna take that data, add it to our report, and also do some cost estimating. What may come out of it, what I'm told, is that we're the first agency in the state of California ahead of the game. They can tell by the records request and the way that we approach them with PG&E what we're doing. And there's been discussions from PG&E that we may be the first city or town to do a pilot program of undergrounding and a major multi-million-dollar undergrounding project. So I'm excited about it. We'll see what happens, but the one piece I want the community to know, and you to know, that this report will be the foundation for us moving forward from adaptation and fire safety. It's going to position us to have a voice with the CPUC and the PG&E on their new undergrounding program that they recently kind of green-lighted back a few months ago. And so this potentially could be the first pilot program under that multi-hundreds of thousands of miles that they're talking about possibly undergrounding moving forward. So with that, I'll stop. Happy to answer any questions. But again, I think I'm excited for the town of Corte Madera. And, you know, we just didn't finish that adaptation assessment. I feel like staff and the council were pushing the envelope and really attacking this thing, trying to protect our town.
Great report, Todd. Thanks so much. Any questions for Todd? Charles. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, so Todd, one thing that came up about, you've mentioned the street sweeper and then also kind of response to storms. Does it help, and have we ever discussed it with our residents that we do that we run them kind of 24/7 while that's happening, and that street, like if you have the ability to move off street and off the gutters, that it's more useful? Is there an ongoing kind of discussion about that? Because I just noticed, the places where the cars were less parked on the street at the time, it helped the leaves and everything flow. I don't know if you've done that in the past, but.
Education in the past. We have done education in the past, but it's a good reminder that we probably preparing for a flood of how we operate and giving, the top 10 recommendations. It's for our community to think about, to clear the leaves off the street or to move your cars away from the drain so we can clear them. That would be a good reminder. So I'll add that.
Any other questions for Todd? Leela.
Just a quick question that came up from some people in my neighborhood in Madera Gardens, where it's very flat, sort of like drainage issues where, when you have a big rain like that, some of the water just kind of pools in the gutters and doesn't, like it's not downhill to the drain. So you're basically just waiting for it to evaporate. Just wondering if the town's aware of those issues and anything that can be done about it.
I would like to think Public Works is, but I'm not, I am not. So I will, it would be helpful to always know that so we can go out and take a look and we add it to our list, because when we do bring the street sweeper out, that's exactly where they'll go. They'll go to those 40 locations in town that have that issue. So if you could let me know what those are, I'm happy to add it to the list or to make sure it's on the list.
Will do. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, just one other thing, Todd, on more of a global level is take into consideration, I want to say when construction's going on around town, because for example, in our neighborhood, we're going through the sewer improvement project in a couple of our streets, and they actually had blocked the storm drains with sandbags. And I think they did that to prevent dirt from running off into the storm drains. I reached out to Public Works and they were really responsive to come out and move them to the side. But it's just something on more of a global level to keep that in mind.
Okay. Thank you. And you actually reminded me of another issue that came up, and it's one of the lessons learned that, on the weekend or at night when these issues happen, that we rely on a citizen to call, the 911 or the non-emergency line for CMPA, and then they alert us. And really, we're out there. And so we should be able to have the technology and ability for people to have that Public Works number where you can just call us and get somebody in real time. And so those are some adjustments, and then communications, obviously, of education for the community moving forward, because there's a lot of nuanced things where it's a really easy fix. And you don't want to call, they're afraid to call the police department, but they would call a Public Works line. So we're going to adjust our operations that way as well, because there's a lot of that.
That's great. Thank you. Any other questions for Todd? And if not, we'll move on to council member reports, and we'll start with Charles.
Yeah, so I've attended a few different things. First off, I attended the MCCMC. I think one of the things that directly affected the town was I was elected as I was currently the alternative, but now I'm one of the primary representatives to the League of California Cities North Bay Division Executive Board. And I think Eli's had some experience in that and set a good tone for me to continue our successes there. They also discussed, they had an infectious disease doctor and also discussed the redistricting and a few other heated topics. We appointed many different other positions to represent us in the county. Then also I attended the TAM meeting. It was kind of a yearly review. Went over state legislation. But in general, with that one, we reviewed the yearly budget, and they're far ahead of what they had conservatively estimated last year. So they were really happy to see the tax base also support their cause. And we also reviewed the director, and I think she set a really ambitious goal in understanding how to make all our lives improve through bicycle, pedestrian, bus, transit, and other forms of public transit moving forward. And she's brought in a huge amount of investment into the county. And given COVID and a few legislative things, she's really been able to secure through the MTC and other kind of nuanced means the funding to keep it going, even though those are tied up in litigation. So, you know, I think we're in a good place in TAM, and I look forward this next year in strategizing how we can build even better here in town with the resources that we can get from TAM. So.
Great, thanks, Charles. Let's move on to Leela.
Hi, yeah, I also attended the MCCMC. That's the only thing I have to report, which Charles covered very well. But Charles, I think you're selling yourself short. Didn't you also take on a role, some kind of a drought committee through MCCMC? So I think you're our town's representative to that.
Correct. Well. Eli and I both are representing on that. Okay. I'll let Eli report on that because unfortunately I was unable to attend the first meeting. So.
Which is partly my fault because I thought that the invite had been shared with you and didn't realize until like the morning of that it hadn't. So I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Leela. We're going to move on to Bob.
Yes, I attended a meeting of the Marin Wildfire Protection Association. Covered a whole bunch of stuff as we always do, but I think one of the most interesting was we talked about something called the Fire Foundry program, which we're going to be help drive and participate in. The premise for this is there's a shortage of quality workers in the fire industry as fire is just booming in the state of California, unfortunately. And the purpose of the program is to create high quality jobs for in fire for disadvantaged community members and really help them build sustainable wage careers in the fire services. And at the same time, want to support wildfire prevention efforts. We actually recruit people and they are given room and board. It's about a 9-month program, I believe. They work 4 days a week in the field on fire prevention. And then they have 1 day of classes at College of Marin. And when they're done with the program, which I think is about 9 months, they move into high-paying fire safety jobs. Other participants besides us include Marin County, the Marin Firefighters Association, North Bay Conservation Corps, Stanford University, and about a half dozen others. But it's a really good, exciting program that we're helping drive and is going to help bring help a lot of people and bring more participants into the fire industry. Thanks.
Very good stuff. Thanks so much, Bob. We'll move on to Fred.
Yeah, I attended along with Leela Casa Buena Working Group Committee, which I believe was last week. Just a couple of things there. We're planning on doing another community meeting. We're scheduling for December 2nd. So look for more information on the agenda to come out with that. The other thing is residents there have been moved out. And then the County of Marin is going to begin construction. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be this week, it may be next week or so. And that's supposed to last for 4 months, which will turn it into permanent supportive housing by adding, I want to say, kitchenettes. They're going to be redoing the landscaping, turning the, I think, manager's office into a community room. So that should be going on for about the next 4 months or so. I also attended the Twin Cities Disaster Committee. Just a couple of things there to mirror what Todd said. So I think if I can remember, Chief Martin said that during a 12 or 14 hour period, I think Central Marin Fire had 86 calls for service during that storm. Most of those were for fallen trees, branches, flooding. I think it did mention there were a couple minor fires. It does sound like they do work closely with Public Works. So I'm glad to see that everybody is syncing up. The other thing also is that the NRG drill, which usually happens during daylight savings time, is scheduled for this weekend. They're doing something differently this year. Usually it's scheduled during the morning. This time they're actually scheduling at night. So that's coming up. I also attended, along with Leela, I think Eli and Charles, the MC monthly meeting, and also attended the age-friendly Corte Madera meeting. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Fred. And the only thing that I wanted to report on is just to let you know that MCCMC Ad Hoc Water Policy Committee did have its first meeting, and the big kind of three things that we accomplished were, one, we're prepping some data requests for all of the agencies in Marin County that deal with water, so it's MMWD, Central Marin Sanitation Agency, the other sanitation agencies. I think those are the main ones. We're prepping data requests on, what their current production and forecast future production of recycled water is, and then also just trying to get a better sense of what the historical, current, and forecast demand for water is. We also kind of set our priorities for the scope of this group, and we're creating working groups right now. Probably going to have our second meeting, I believe, the beginning of December. So by that point, we should probably have some data back from these water agencies and be able to move forward on that. And that is all that I have to share, which brings us to item 8, discussion of draft agenda for our next meeting. Do we have any comments on our draft agenda? And if not, we have no SD2 meeting, so we are adjourned.